Shalom, this is Tony Robinson of Restoration of Torah Ministries, and here we'll be teaching again on our Chiastic Revelation series. And this teaching is entitled The Chiastic Structure of Moses' Birth. The Chiastic Structure of Moses' Birth. Now, most of you know that at Restoration of Torah Ministries, I teach that Yeshua is the Messiah. And I teach that he's the Messiah because it is plainly taught in the Tanakh, and especially in the Torah. And whereas many people cannot see the prophecies of Yeshua in the Torah, in fact, it is actually the most prophesied event about the Messiah, is his death, burial, and resurrection in 3 days. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at one such example, the example of Moses' birth, because Moses is a major messianic figure. And you will recall that whenever you see someone who is about to die, they're right at death's door, they wind up living, and the number 3, you've just been presented a shadowy, veiled image of their death and resurrection. And you will see the number 3 in these stories because the number 3 teaches resurrection. So let's go ahead and let's start looking at this chiastic structure and see what we can find. First of all, I want you to note that we're just looking at Exodus chapter 1 verse 22 all the way down to chapter 2 verses 9, and we're just going chronologically here: 122, 2b, 2a, 3b, 4, 5a, 5b, 6, 7 through 9. We're just going chronologically through this story, but again, all of the stories in the Tanakh are told in thematic patterns. They weren't just the prophets of old, and especially Moses, one of the major prophets. They were not telling stories solely in chronological order, but they told them to fit thematic patterns. So we're gonna look and see what the thematic connection is between Exodus chapter 1 verse 22 and Exodus chapter 2 verses 7 through 9. Right here we read that Pharaoh commanded all his people, saying, "Throw all of the male babies into the Nile River." That is thematically connected to the end of the story, where Pharaoh's daughter drew Moses from the water so that he could live. Now, I've taught over and over, and in my Torah series, I teach you how Moses should have died when he was born. Pharaoh had commanded to throw all of the male babies into the river. In other words, he meant to throw them into the river for what purpose? For their death. Okay, so implicit behind this first theme here, theme A, is to throw Moses, or all of the babies, including Moses, into the Nile River so that they could die. And his mother follows through on the picture of death by putting him in a basket and putting him on the river, where in the natural he would not have survived. So she actually obeyed Pharaoh's command to a certain extent by throwing him into the water. Well, again, this right here, this first sentence, right, this first theme is teaching us that Moses should have died after he was thrown in the river. However, at the end, in the second half of the story, we see that Pharaoh's daughter drew Moses from the water. In other words, if she had not taken him from the water, he would have died for sure. So in other words, she surely gave him his life back. She's the one who caused him to live. And so clearly this is a story of death and resurrection. And this first theme A, and the chiastic structure here is certainly teaching this theme, where up here in the first half we have a picture of death. It's only a picture of death. Moses didn't literally die, but this is a picture of death. And then in the second half of the chiastic structure we see the picture of resurrection. Okay, we'll go on to the second connection, element B, and we'll see how it's related. This talks about how Moses' mother saw him, that he was good, and so she hid him for 3 months. That's thematically connected in the second half of the story to the maidservant who opened the basket, saw Moses, and took pity on him. Now, there's 2 great connections here. Moses' mother saw him, and the maidservant saw him. The mother saw that he was good. She saw a certain quality in him. and her affections were for him, and the maidservant took pity on him. Now, the other important thing here is the number 3, because it says that she hid him for 3 months. And again, the Torah's picture of death, burial, and resurrection is that a person will be brought to death's door, they will live, and you will see the number 3, and there's the number 3 because the Messiah was in the tomb for 3 days and 3 nights. And so there's the number 3 that teaches resurrection. We'll go on to our next element, element C, and again we see that all of the themes in the first half are being repeated in the second half. In the top we see how Moses' mother was no longer able to hide him, so she took a reed basket and put him in it. And in the second half, we saw that he was seen among the reeds. Okay, so again, the thematic connections there are extremely clear. We look at Exodus 2b verses 2:5a for element D, and we're going to see that his mother placed him among the reeds at the bank of the river, and Pharaoh's daughter went down to bathe by the river. So the common thematic connection there is by the river. And lastly, we have the central axis, Exodus 2 verse 4, and it talks about his sister stationed herself at a distance to know what would happen to him. Okay, and so that takes us through our chiastic structure, and this verse right here can be seen as either the most important point as far as what's going to happen to him, or as a point of turning, because up until this point everything is going negative for Moses as he's about to as he has a death sentence. His mother tries to hide him, and from Exodus chapter 2 verse 4 on, it's all about how his life is given to him. So the central axis can also function as the most important point. So what have we learned? The picture of Moses' figurative death is thematically connected to a picture of his figurative resurrection. We saw that in element A of the chiastic structure. This connection helps paint the picture of death and resurrection, and again we see the number 3. And I like to say that the rabbis see these pictures, although they do not recognize them as messianic prophecies of the death, burial, and resurrection of Messiah Yeshua. But these pictures of death and resurrection are plain for anyone to see who studies the scriptures thematically. Now at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to pick up this teaching in the next YouTube video, because we only have 9 to 10 minutes here. And so when we come back, we're going to see how the rabbis do actually indeed see these teachings of death, burial, and resurrection. Shalom, shalom.